Well, hello everyone, welcome to FM Scout with me, Johnny, Access Euphoria. In today's episode, we are going to be looking at the top 10 tips I have for FM18. We're going to be going through them now, but before we do, I would just like to say, if you haven't already, please do head across to Access Euphoria, that's my channel. Currently got an FM18 Let's Play series with Leeds United ongoing, and it's going really well, very enjoyable. I will also be doing lots of extra top tips series that will kind of break away from these ones and go into a bit more detail, and have extra ones on the list sort of for buying players, selling players, finances, all that kind of good stuff as well. So do head over and check those out. They will be coming up probably after this one's been released, so do keep heading over and giving it a check out. But let's get into it and check out the top tips for FM18. So let's get started then with top tip number 1, and this is very important, especially this year with the increased injuries you tend to get with the added focus on the medical centre. Just so far in playing FM18, I've had a lot more injuries, a lot more niggly injuries as well, just leading up to a game or just after a game. Especially I think it's because obviously FM have put a lot of focus on the medical centre this year. And the big thing is obviously keeping your players fit. But also this is extremely useful for small squads or where you get to like the winter periods, especially in England where you have back-to-back games constantly for like a few week period. You need to keep your main players playing so you can try and win those games, especially if you're up against big rivals. The thing to do is after a game, so I've just played a game here, and there's another one in 3 days' time. I want all this squad fit again. So I select the first one. Generally, you don't have to do this for the keeper because they don't really get unfit. As you can see, 91%. Select the next one right at the bottom. So your top 10 players there, your outfield players, they're all selected now with the shift. You right click, hit training, go down to rest, and then I generally go for 2 days. It means obviously they're not going to be in training for 2 days, but you got to weigh up the fact of missing training. So yes, they might miss a couple of days of development on, the training side of things, but you're then going to have that full squad into like the 90% ready for the next game. So if we just sort of quickly skip ahead. So as you can see now, if you have a look at the players, they're all around 95s, 92s, 95s, 93, 94. They're much fitter than they would have been if they'd had their training as well. They would have still had a day rest, I believe, anyway, but they would have probably been, a couple of them would have been struggling. I imagine some of them would have got there. Obviously, this also depends on their natural fitness, but some of them would have been struggling. The likes that are still struggling now, 92, 93, 94, they might have not made it to the 90s. So that means they would have tired a lot quicker in this upcoming game for you. So a big tip I can give you is just rest your players, especially around the big games where you don't want to lose your important players. Top tip number 2 is offering players for the unspecified option. Now, what that means is, for example, if we take this guy here, Kian Hansen, he's a decent player, he's actually wanted by a club, and often when you join the club, or when you start the game, you'll be set as default to go as unspecified. Now, you can change that so it does it as the player's value. But a big thing that I found is that, especially with players that maybe aren't wanted and you're trying to offload, that you can sometimes struggle to get the right amount. Sometimes maybe you go too high, too low. It can vary. Now, the easiest way to know exactly what that club wants to spend is hit unspecified. If you hit unspecified, offer to clubs, by the next turn, you're going to have an idea of exactly what they want to spend. So here you are, and you've got lots of different clubs involved now. So you've almost got a bidding war. If you'd gone in there at, say, 800, 900, a million, whatever it might have been, you wouldn't have exactly known what they were willing to spend. But you've got, say, Anderlecht coming there straight off the bat at 800,000. So you know, really, that you can now negotiate that up even more than £800,000. So you could probably get this up to, let's say, let's go for 1.3 and see what they negotiate. So yes, they're now coming up a little bit. So go 1.1 and then boom. So you've got around about £1.2 million there. Now, if you'd have just offered at 825,000, you would never have known that you'd get that. Similarly, if you maybe offered at 1.4 million, they might not come in at all. You might have had someone that come in at less money. So a big tip again, I would just sort of bring there. I mean, it is kind of more useful for where clubs are interested in a certain player. You're maybe just trying to offer them out just to maybe offload them for the squad. They don't fit your tactics or whatever. Just doing unspecified to start with. It can generate some interest from different clubs, and you get an idea of what value they're willing to spend on them. Straight off the bat, you can see, who's willing to spend the most, go in there, negotiate them, and obviously then, if that kind of falls through, you've got some backup options as well. Top tip number 3 then, and this is to do with loan transfers, especially again if you're doing a lot of youth signings. or you've got loads of youth players that you're looking to offload and loan out season on season, the last thing you want to do is just hit the offered clubs bit and end up with a million replies for every single player. Most of them are saying they'll play them as backup or rotation, and that's no good. If you're trying to develop that player, you don't want them just playing a backup player, rotation player, because they could do that. They could get pretty more experience just being in your under 21s. You want them playing week in, week out. The best way to do this is just to hit the little lock icon on squad status first team. Yes, it's not the be all and science. Like if they want to be a key player, it might lock them out a bit. But generally, you're going to get down to you're just going to get basically the ones that are going to play in first team. And that means you're not going to get all the rotation options and backup options or cover for first team that you generally just get as a whim. Now, the other thing you can do is the exact same, but for money. So if you wanted to obviously exclude the teams that are going to offer you no money for them, especially let's say if it's a really good player, maybe just doesn't fit into your tactics, again, putting that in and locking it is a very good option. The other thing is if you're just you would like the 100%, but you're not set in stone about it, set it up there, but don't lock it in. And then that way, they can obviously make in their negotiations. And if you offer to clubs, we'll sort of skip ahead and see what comes back. And hopefully, you will now see that they'll only be first team. So first team, first team, first team, first team, first team, boom. And like I said, a few teams have come in at less than 100%, but you can see these two haven't. So you could just easily go, yes, yes, no, 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 done. Top tip number 4 is quite a very important one, I would say, and that is it's your transfer clauses. At the beginning of any new taking over a club, you want to check this area out. It can get you some serious donga early on to help you out. As you see here, I've only got a little bit of money in the bank at this club, but if I go to the transfers page and hit clauses, you can see all these different clauses. Now, some work for us and some don't. Some we owe, some they owe us. But if you see this one with a pound sign on, this means that basically you've negotiated either a way that you can pay less money for one of your own clauses, or that you've negotiated money in for one that you've previously had, going to a new club. Hence this one right here, for example, Winston Reid sell-on clause. There's a 10% next transfer fee owed to FC Midtjylland for that fee. Obviously, he is at West Ham, worth £20 million, so they've negotiated 2.61 million. If you sell that right here, right now, boom, you've just got 2.61 million, and look at that. Your transfer budget has gone up from about, what was it, 100,000? No, it was 300,000. It's now 1.8 million. That just shows you exactly what that can do for you. So that's a huge increase straight off the bat at this club to go out and invest in some brand new players. We're here at tip number 5 now, halfway through, and this one is regards to transfers then. And this is using the after 50 games and after a specified target, which they've obviously added in this year, the target one. So for instance, going after Bailey Peacock-Farrell, for example, they're sort of saying 10.5 million for him. Now we'll forget the additional clauses down here they've kind of added, not too concerned about that. So obviously, let's say you don't have 10.5 million and you really want this X player. Obviously, we're just using this as an example. But for instance, if we say, right, well, we've got less than that available. How about we go at 4.5? The value obviously a lot less, but this is obviously a hot prospect youngster for this team. So, but then we say, well, if they become good then, and this is especially useful for those hot prospect players, for those ones that they might not actually make it for you, for example, this is a very good technique. It's one that I use a lot when doing my Build a Nation series, where I just buy hundreds of regens. Many of them won't make it for my club. Some obviously I will let go to other teams. So for example, I'll never have to pay this 50 games fee. So paying a little bit extra overall is worth it, because if it doesn't work, I'll have paid less, actually, if you kind of get what I mean. So for example, if we then say, right, we'll pay you, I don't know, let's say 4.5 million there, plus if we get to, what should we say, Superliga. So if we win the Superliga, we'll give you £1 million as well. They have to pay at least 15 games in that. So he plays 15 games and wins the Superliga. Boom. That's acceptable. So we just cut down to 4.5 million, that asking price of £10 million in one. Now, obviously, we probably would have got maybe for about 8 or 9 million, because obviously I've tried to actually go through to see what they wanted. And it was about 8 or 9 million they was wanting up front, cash-wise. So we've been able to cut that down to 4.5 million. We might have even got a bit less than that, but that's just as an example for you. If that player then becomes a world beater, then yes, you've paid a little bit more money for them, potentially. However, it's not actually that far off, really. You could have maybe got them, let's say, for 8-9 million, so you maybe pay an extra £2 million. But the thing is, if they don't make it, you've saved yourself what, £4 million? So there's a big plus and negative with it, but I think that's a huge thing to bear in mind if you're doing a lot of hot prospect signings like I tend to do. That could be very, very useful for you indeed. It's tip number 6, and this one is all about tutoring. It's the most important bit about developing your young players. Andreas Poulsen, for example, in our B team here, is a youngster, he's a left back. He is, definitely a player that you've got bags of potential you want to try and tutor. So what that involves is basically picking the right tutor from. Now, there's different variables to this, but the main thing you want to do is look at the determination stat. You want someone with a higher determination stat than the player you want to tutor. So this guy's got 12, so you want someone above that, because when you tutor a player, they can take that determination stat, but they can also get the traits from that player as well. So do bear that in mind. If you are then training a player that's got some really bad traits, such as like dives into tackles, plays way out of trouble, they're going to take those as well, or there's a very high chance they will take them if they, tutoring goes well. So then that might be some stats or some traits that you don't want them to have. Alternatively, if you tutor someone with a lower determination, this guy 20, for example, you tutored him with 10, it'll come down to 10. So that's a lot to lose, and that could really stump their development. So the big thing to do is go to development, go to tutoring. It'll give you a selection of players, but you can do it vice versa. You can go to an experienced player, hit on tutor, and get the options. For example, we can go to Novak, hit tutoring, and you'll get some options. So here he is, Andreas Poulsen is there. So you can do it both ways. If you've got an ideal tutor, you can do it starting with them, or you can do it from the youngster. But this guy you want to use because he's got better determination and he's got a decent thing. Possesses long flat throw. That's not too bad, especially if this guy can be tutored to do some long throws. That could be very useful. So you want to tutor this guy. So let's pick, obviously, Novak then. Ask him to tutor. Senior member. Invite them in. Boom. There we go. And it's as simple as that. But just picking the right tutor can have such a great impact. So make sure you look at those determination stats, but also have a good look at the traits as well. Now we're on to our next tip, tip number 7, and this is all about communication. Communication is key, especially this year with the added focus of the dynamics page. As you can see, a few bits here, atmosphere average, got a bit of a red bit here, cohesion's not looking great, managerial sport's not looking great. We can try and improve this atmosphere because obviously a main thing is looking at the player's happiness. So you've got this tab here, the happiness tab, and if you have a look, you can see, for example, Tim Sparv is just slightly happy. If we click on him, however, and have a chat with him. So a main thing to do is every time, especially if you go on a bad run of games, you need to get your squad happy again. If they're all unhappy, you're not going to get out of that rut. You need them at least happy. So a big thing to do is praise them. Now, the two things that you can do, because obviously you don't want to praise their recent form if you've been losing every game and they're playing shockingly, because that, they haven't played well. But you can praise their conduct, because generally they don't do anything bad unless they're missing training, or you've got one of those news articles where they've done something stupid, whatever it might be, then yeah. But also you can praise their training levels. Now again, don't do it if they've got big red lines and the training's shocking, but if they've got some green lines, they're doing all right, then praise them. But for this guy, I would just praise conduct. So go on to that as vice captain, but generally it's the top option. You hit that, he's gone to very good and he's very happy now. So boom, he's sorted. If you go down to the next guy, interaction, praise, conduct, done. He's happy. That's happy as well. Novak, another one. Let's go praise him as well. Conduct, real happy. He's really good. He's happy as well. You're getting the idea here. So even a transfer listed player that maybe you've got to keep around the squad, or there's some dealings going on, he's happy as well. You're getting the idea. I'll skip ahead just a second. There you go. You can see that obviously everyone's looking happy there. Things you can do is even the happy players, like for example this guy here. I was also sort of praise conduct and I praise the training level. Again, just make sure you're double checking that they warrant those bits. Make sure they've not got any bits going on like they're not performing well in training. Because obviously if they're not performing in training and then you say well done training, that'll dampen it. But generally they are. So it is too easy, quick wins. And generally, unless they're sort of missing training sessions and being a right pain in the ass for you, then you can always praise the conduct as well. So that's just an idea of exactly, you can boost morale in the squad just by having a quick 5-10 minutes going through, chatting to all the players. Communication is definitely key. And on to tip number 8. And this one is, I think, very important, but maybe one that many people might miss, especially at clubs that maybe finances are a bit tight. And that is sending a player, usually a foreign player, obviously, that doesn't know your language, not from obviously your country, on an intensive language course. Now, obviously, this does cost a bit of money. In this case, 7.5k. And yes, so that does come out of your club. So if you've maybe got a lot of players to send, or you're a struggling team, it might be a lot of money, but this is really useful, I believe, anyway. And obviously, it's sometimes hard to see exactly the mechanics of the game. But one thing I've always kind of felt I've seen is when a team speaks a common language, they perform better. That's how it feels for me. I've sometimes signed a really great player in a different league to say what I normally would do. So maybe an English player gone abroad, and I've signed them for my abroad team, and they've not performed half as well as they would do in, say, their respective, home nation. And then once they've actually been in the club a little while, they've passed their intensive language course, they've started to gel with the team, it all seems to come good for them. And I think a big key part of that, obviously there's the gelling, there's getting game time, there's getting confidence, and maybe if you're a striker, getting the first goal and all that kind of stuff. But also, I think communication with the rest of the squad and sort of knowing the nation's language is very important as well. So I would definitely recommend, if you've just got the cash, always remember to do that. And always just double check the players in your first team when you take over. Like this guy, obviously it's a recent signing in the real sort of world. So they obviously have the option to send them for the intensive language course. So don't forget the players that are already at a club, but also do it to players who join as well. I think that's a big top tip. I think it can really help with their development and their sort of getting integrated into your squad. Big tip number 9 is managing your finances. Now, we kind of did something sort of similar earlier with tip number 4 around transfer clauses. We got that extra money into the club looking at those clauses. Again, a big thing to do if it's a club struggling with money. You can, if you've got a clause to activate and get some money into the club, definitely do it. It'll help you out in the short term. But also just making sure that you're not doing unnecessary transfer deals that's going to cost you money. Because the last thing you want to do is get your club bankrupt, and obviously, yes, it'll get bailed out to an extent, but you're then going to have financial pressures. You're going to get your transfer money retained is going to go right down. If you're not sure what that is, obviously it's this bit here. So it means when you sell a player, even if you've got an amazing player you sell for 20 million, if you've run the club into the ground, you might just be set at 10% of that, and you will get next to nothing, and then you're not going to be able to replace that player. Your squad's then going to start struggling because you're going to be losing players. The board will be looking to make money, so they're going to offload. If you get a derisory bid, they may accept it above you just because it's money in the club and they desperately need it. There's lots of different factors involved there, so a big thing is just watch your finances. Spend what you've got in a club. Look after your wages. Don't want to be over. Obviously, taking on this club just in the first few days, you can see they're already overspending. So a big thing to do in here, we go straight to adjustment and put it across. So the committed spending is 132. So bump it a bit above, so you've got a bit of spending money at least, because you want to have a bit of maneuverability. And as you can look, that's easily sorted now. So straight off the bat, we've been able to fix one problem. We've been able to move a bit of transfer budget across. Again, linked to selling that clause. And now we know that we've got that kind of money to spend. Obviously, you can then go and identify players to sell, loan out, whatever it might be. But a main thing is manage your finances. And again, if you check out my tips for buying and selling players as well, that will maybe give you a few extra ways of getting that extra few pounds out of deals that you do to get extra money into your club, especially a club that may be struggling, or you maybe doing a youth conveyor belt where obviously bigger teams are buying your young players and keeping the club afloat. Definitely check that video out, coming soon on my channel, because that might help you out with this one as well. But the main tip is watch your finances. Our final top tip number 10 is don't overpromise. And the best way I can show this to you is right here with the season expectations. In this screen, you can basically say that you're going to do extra. So I could say I'm going to reach the second knockout round, I'm going to win the league, and win the cup. And that gets me not very much more. You generally don't get a massive amount more for doing that. So my big tip would just be to always play it safe and go down with a minimum expectation, especially in the early years of a new save, because the last thing you want to do is make a rod for your own back. If you say you're going to win it and then you don't, you could easily get sacked, especially if you had a poor run up to that, or if you've maybe let them down with some other promises, then you're out the door, and then that's your series over, and you might be good, especially if you was trying to do a long-term series with that one club and not do a journeyman. That'd really annoy you. So that's my main tip, is just play it safe. In the end, if you then go above and beyond that, you're going to be untouchable in their eyes. You're going to get better contracts, and you are going to look the bee's knees to them. So just play it safe. That's my big final top tip for you. Just play it safe. It's not worth the minuscule extra amount of money you generally get for the extra pressure you're going to be under. So that's what my last top tip is. I hope you've enjoyed this little top tips episode today. If you have, please head over to Access Euphoria, where I have plenty more top tip series either on the channel now or coming very soon. So do keep an eye on that. But I've been Johnny, Access Euphoria. See you later.